Tonight, we're really fortunate to have two outstanding panelists that have taken their time tonight to join us. One is our councilperson for District 4, Janani Ramachandran, who's a key policymaker in the city among the other council members, and of course the mayor. And we also have the pleasure of hearing from our new, relatively new since last summer, city administrator, Jestin Johnson, who oversees and implements all the policies that our city council has the wisdom to pass. So I will introduce both of them in a second. But first, I want to briefly cover some logistics for tonight. On the screen, you'll see a list of ways that we want to function. One is if you have any technical questions, there's the list. Use the chat feature on your computer and send a message to our host, who tonight is Robbie Neely, our administrator for Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association. But if you have questions for our speakers, which we hope you will, we have maybe 15 or 20 already that we've lined up based on your concerns and comments and questions that you sent in that we will be posing. But there'll be an opportunity for our audience to also send in their questions. If you have issues with speaker view, you can deal with that on your end. There will be a survey at the end. I do want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded and it will be available to those who weren't able to join us in 2 or 3 days, as Robbie will post it on our website. So with that, let me begin to introduce our speakers. First, as I said, Jestin Johnson, who's been with us, I believe, maybe you can correct me, Mr. Johnson, I think since the middle of summer, May, April, March, was it June, July? Anyway, it's great to have you on board with the city of Oakland. Briefly, let me introduce you, and you can add whatever comments you'd like. But Jestin Johnson came to Oakland as our city administrator from the private sector, where he worked as IBM's corporate social responsibility manager. Mr. Johnson had also almost 2 decades of experience working in local government in both Georgia and Arizona, key political states this next year, by the way, as you probably know, as deputy county administrator and as a city manager. We are sure he has found this job the best position he will ever have and will stay with us for many years to come. The city administrator, as many of you know, oversees all the major city departments, including key departments like police, fire, public works, transportation. He works very hard behind the scenes to implement, as I said, the policies and legislation and regulations that the council passes and the mayor supports. So it's great that you'll be able to join us tonight. I also would like to introduce our city council person, for those of you who don't know who she is. She's now in her 2nd year. She's still the youngest member on the council, I believe. She serves on 3 committees: Finance and Management, Human Enrichment, and Rules and Legislation. She's been a strong voice in her year for our district and for the city, especially around issues like 911 hiring, hiring in general, fire prevention, grant writing, and crime prevention. So many thanks to them and to our hardworking board members who make Piedmont Pines Neighborhood Association the body that it is. So yes, thank you for joining us tonight, all of you, especially our board members and all of the members that have paid their dues, and many of them do in our 1,400 neighborhoods in Piedmont Pines. We're a strong, active group representing the 1,400 households, and we host these kinds of forums with both political and staff leadership during our year, as I mentioned, the 2 coming up, addressing issues that our neighborhood and our city face, including fire prevention. As I mentioned, the one in spring, public safety issues, and a whole range of infrastructure issues. So tonight, I just wanted to, by way of transition, and I'll have both our councilperson and Mr. Johnson give brief introductory comments, and then we'll dive into the questions we posed to them, and they have seen them prior to the meeting tonight. But let me just voice in general some of the frustrations that are felt across the city, as well as in Piedmont Pines, by constituencies who have concerns about the level of service and response time in a number of areas, especially, and the issue that's on the forefront of many who are on tonight are in the area of crime prevention. street and pothole repairs, fire prevention. I think we all understand the limits of government, budget-wise and in terms of hiring. But it is these kinds of forums that help us understand the progress we hope is being made in all of these areas, and for us to have this two-way conversation. So with that, let me suggest that these kinds of topics will be those we'll try to get to tonight. There's a lot of issues, as you can see, but we put together the slide just so you know that we haven't left anything out, we hope. So on that note, let me introduce Mr. Johnson, Jestin Johnson, and if you could make a 5-minute introductory statement of whatever you'd like, and then our council person, Mr. Ramachandran, and then we'll turn to the questions that we posed that are probably more specific. But with that, the floor is yours, Mr. Johnson.
Certainly. Well, thank you, and a good evening to you and certainly the entire community. I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and also want to thank your Councilmember Ramachandran, who's been quite an ally for me since I've been here. And so she's been at the forefront of identifying and addressing and bringing to the fore many of the issues that we will discuss this evening from day one. So I want to thank her just for the opportunity. So just a little bit of, so thank you for the introduction as well. I think you pretty much hit everything on its head, and just wanted to, just for those that don't know, by way of the city administrator's office, our role and responsibility, as mentioned, is implementation of a number of policies that the city council adopts. But in helping me deliver in that area, the structure of our office, we have 2 assistant city administrators who have their respective portfolios on somewhat of the human services side, as well as on the infrastructure front. Latonda Simmons and Betsy Lake, who are my 2 assistant administrators. I also have 2 deputy city administrators who have sort of their own areas of responsibility, largely supporting the city clerk's office, our EEO related organization, also our 88 programs, and also 1 deputy administrator that oversees many of the high level projects related to our sugar sweetened beverage tax, our neighborhood services, and our sustainability initiatives. Most recently, we hired and brought on board a new deputy administrator, Ms. Monica Davis, who was the assistant director in the Department of Planning and Building. So we're very delighted that we are in the place to have such talent within the city of Oakland, and they're choosing to join my team. With respect to the structure of our office, I just wanted to just be sort of very clear on the direct areas of responsibility or direct reports that I have are finance, fire, human resources, the Department of Race and Equity, Violence Prevention, the Department of Workplace and Employment Standards, and Communications. And so I report directly to the mayor. So I report directly to the mayor as well as the chief of police. And so we have a joint responsibility in supporting our law enforcement agencies, and I have direct oversight over the fire department. So I'm very thankful for the collaboration and partnership that I have with Mayor Childs. We certainly try our best to move the organization forward. This has certainly been quite a delight with respect to coming into the city of Oakland. It's certainly, I was eyes wide open when I arrived, but it's really interesting once you are sort of in the belly of the beast, so to speak. A lot of the narrative that we hear, that I heard on the outside, it was really squelched to some degree because Oakland is doing so much right. But there are challenges and opportunities that we have to be honest about, and also really take a holistic approach with respect to addressing many of the issues that we're seeing and experiencing day in and day out. So I know that we have just a bit of time, and I do have my stop at 7:30, so I don't want to speak too long, but I want to give Councilmember Ramachandran an opportunity to share her words, and we can certainly look to get into the questions this evening.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember, would you like to say a few words before we launch into questions?
Absolutely. I had planned to go over a few key topics that our office is working on, and cut me off if you want to dive into the questions at any time. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again this year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Janani Ramachandran, and I am a year, a month, and about 2 weeks into the job of being your city council member for District 4. It has been quite the journey and learning experience, with the learning curve being about this steep. But, you know, when I started this, and probably a year ago when I spoke to you all, I talked about three fundamental principles that I wanted to guide my actions through. And that's accountability, transparency, and responsiveness. And to this day, those are still my guiding principles when it comes to the work that I do as your city council member, which, as was discussed earlier today, is we are a body responsible for passing our city's budget, as well as putting forward legislation. So I rely closely on our partnerships with City Administrator Johnson, who, you know, has really hit the ground running since he's been in this role, to be able, and I rely on him and his team to be able to make sure that we're enforcing the policies and enacting and implementing the policies and that City Council sets. So with that being said, you know, throughout my a little over a year into this job, one of the most important things that I feel we have been, as a team, have tried to do is be honest and open about issues that we don't necessarily feel that are working. There have been many a council vote where I might be the lone no vote sometimes, or I vote a certain way or say a certain thing, even though I might be getting pushback for sort of shaking things up, some might say. But to me, this is a core part of my job, and in that being responsive to your concerns and your needs. And so with that being said, I wanted to dive into three of the issues that we have been focusing on and continuing to focus on. So first and foremost is public safety. Last year, we started an initiative called #LiftUpD4, which is really the summation of our various efforts to make sure that we are both economically rebounding after COVID and making sure that District 4 and all of Oakland really are safe and accessible neighborhoods for everyone. So I wanted to quickly run through a couple of the issues that our office has been more that our office has been active in advocating for. So firstly is on the crime prevention side is working with OPG to make sure that we have enough patrol, which frankly right now we don't at the moment. And patrol and presence as far as prevention goes can mean a lot of things. We have a couple of foot patrol officers throughout the district. Some are that are on permanent assignment, some that are on temporary assignment. I meet very regularly with our area captain. So Piedmont Pines falls under OPD Area 2. We have a new OPD captain, Lisa Ausmus, who has been really wonderful in trying to fight for resources for our district and respond to the needs of the moment. Another update that I did want to share when it comes to that presence, to really help incentivize officers to be able to stay present in our district as much as possible, is the setup of a substation. We'll have a formal announcement soon, but I believe the keys have been transferred to OPD, and close to Montclair Village, we now have an OPD substation that more details will follow soon. But the goal of this is really to give the patrol officers and beat officers on duty a place to rest and stay present, and invite them and encourage them to really stay in the district in between service calls, because a lot of us, myself included, firmly believe that the presence, even if it's OPD patrol cars stationed outside a busy commercial area, can lead to a level of deterrence. The second thing when it comes to public safety that my policies and efforts have been focused on is around investigation. And this can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But one of the efforts that we have been working with our interim chief, Darren Allison, is what all policies and practices can we implement to get to OPD having effectively a real-time crime center. So one of the things needed for that, mirroring other departments nationwide that have similar real-time crime centers, the goal is to basically be able to feed OPD with as much up-to-date information as possible to be able to investigate and go after crime so that individuals causing it can be apprehended as quickly as possible. One of these was passed unanimously by council last year, and those are the flock license plate readers. There are other policies and purchases in the works, hopefully some CCTVs, drones, as well as the purchase of a fixed wing aircraft, which is shown to be more effective and more environmentally friendly than the current and less expensive and more economical than the helicopters we currently have. Apart from that, one of the things that I have been starting to increasingly do is advocate for funds to support our public safety effort. Most of you that are here in this room know that Oakland is facing a massive budget deficit. The numbers that were projected when City Council went into the budget cycle last year are actually worse than we thought, about $170 million worse than we thought when it comes to generating revenue. So we do rely on our county, state, and federal partners to be able to help us get the funding that we need for a lot of things. So to that point, my efforts last year during the budget cycle included trying to fund a grant writer for dedicated to work with OPD. Unfortunately, that did not pass with my colleagues. However, council did pass a citywide grant writer. My hope is coming into this budget cycle that I will, and I do plan to reintroduce an OPD grant writer position, that this role, coupled with the citywide grant writer who I hope will be hired soon, can together make sure that Oakland is harnessing all the available opportunities for federal and state funding that are out there. There are other forms of advocacy as well. I made a trip to DC to meet with some of our California legislators over there to see, what funds can we pull upon to help Oakland, specifically anything related to public safety, OPD, violence prevention, fire, as well as transportation efforts. I've also joined a regional task force that's been newly set up across the East Bay with city and county leaders that is aiming to increase intercity cooperation and collaboration, both between police departments themselves as well as among elected officials, to really create this East Bay public safety corridor where we can collectively use our forces to advocate for funding again at the federal and state level. Stan, is it okay if I go into a couple more topics, or would you prefer?
No, I think the first series of questions relates to, well, first of all, the first one relates to you, and then we could just stick with public safety and let Mr. Johnson talk about the implementation side of all those great policies that you're putting forward and have followed up on. And the first question, though, I just want to comment on the fact that you have a very strong advisory committee and you have encouraged people to participate. And this one issue of 911 and hiring, whatever, you're having a hearing tomorrow. I just thought you'd highlight that. I just got the note about it, urging people to actually either attend or comment on the need to increase hiring. And that's a question that was going to be addressed to Mr. Johnson as well. But you want to just talk a little bit about how people get involved and become more part of a responsive governance.
Absolutely. And I will use the 911 dispatcher as an example. So most of you over here might have experienced the reality of our 911 system over the past year, which is unfortunately needing to wait 5 and even 10 minutes sometimes to be able to get a response when you call 911. The Alameda County Grand Jury report back in 2020 kind of highlighted these issues. And again, in their grand jury report last year, highlighted the need to improve our technology, as well as, most critically, staffing. So we've had many conversations about the many ways in which our 911 dispatch system can be improved. And I know Administrator Johnson has been working with various departments to get some of those updates moving forward. But the aspect that really stuck out to me was hiring, because just from me being out and about town, it felt like there was genuinely a lot of interest in folks who were applying to these roles. So it wasn't for a lack of interest or lack of pay or anything like that, that it didn't feel like we were staffing up these roles adequately. So we did a deep dive. I submitted a public records request and worked with both OPD as well as our HR department to get information about, hey, what happened? So we found out that between April of 2022 and April of 2023, HR had mistakenly missed out on about 1,000 applications for the 911 dispatch role. And the bright side of this really is that, I'm grateful to these the departments for acknowledging that there was a human error here at play. But the important thing, and I think notable, is between the time that I requested this information in late fall of last year and today, or towards the end of last year and today, the 911 dispatcher roles went from 20 vacancies to 4 vacancies in a very short period of time. So to me, that shows the capability of our HR department and OPD and others to collaborate to hire more quickly. However, the city of Oakland has about 800 vacancies, and many of these vacancies are connected to key public safety functions. So going back just to OPD, we have non-sworn civilian jobs. So these are not police officers. These are other trained individuals, some of which are entry-level jobs, some of which are not, but essentially you don't need to be a sworn officer to fill these roles. There are a lot of vacancies for evidence technicians and forensic analysts and other roles that are really critical to public safety. And my ask to both HR and OPD is to see what policy changes or practices could be amended to use that same urgency and efficiency that they did use to fill those 911 dispatcher roles to be able to translate into these other roles as well. And the same goes for roles in the fire department as well, with fire inspectors, macro interventionists, and other public safety.
So this is a great spot here. This issue is top of our agenda, but there are many others. But I understand there are only 37 of the 800 positions actually that are being put forward. So I'd like to maybe switch over to Mr. Johnson. With all those great proposals, some of which are in the questions that I would have posed to you that you've seen, there's still, a range of problems in terms of implementing these ideas. And maybe you could speak to some of the concerns we have. There's this coalition in nearby cities that have formed this arrangement to share data. There's a license plate reading. There's the response time issue that's been addressed. But the rise in crime violence continues, and the arrest rate is abysmally low, like 1.5–2%. Compared to other cities. I think it's at the bottom. So I'm curious, and those also macro created to kind of take some of the pressure off police. But what can you tell us about moving this forward in terms of implementing some of these ideas and programs?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. So, Councilmember Ramachandran, 2 things I want to make sure I add to your comments about 911 is also, so there's the people side, which Councilmember Ramachandran laid out, but also the technological piece, which is the update of the computer-aided dispatch system. And as you all may recall, last summer, I think I was here maybe 3–4 weeks, and 911 center went down. And so, but as a part of that process, there had to be an implementation and upgrade of the CAD, or the computer-aided dispatch system. That implementation should be complete by the end of June of this year. But that's an important piece that I want to make sure I hit on with respect to a 911, but also on the recruitment process. The proctored exam, Councilmember, she was she was an advocate with respect to making sure the recruitment process and the testing of our 911 dispatchers, we transitioned from the sort of at home, being able to take the test at home typing exam, to having a more proctored approach to make sure from an ethical standpoint, but also a level of consistency with respect to industry standards, that change has been implemented. So I just wanted to make sure I hit on that. One of the things I wanted to just, with respect to the question about the rise in crime, and it's certainly one of the areas that is of utmost importance, not just to me, but also to the council and the mayor. In lockstep, there's no denying where we are as an organization. We're very grateful to have the support from the governor's office, who allowed and had actually placed CHP, California Highway Patrol, in and throughout parts of our community.
Will they return? Because they were pulled, right? So are they going to plan to be returning?
There has been a request made, so I can't say one way or the other timing wise, but that is correct. And so we did see marked improvement with respect. There's a report being generated with respect to the number of arrests that have been made, and there was a noticeable difference with respect to CHP being in place. But I will tell you, and I work very closely with the chief. I don't direct the work of the department, but in partnership, one of the things I know for sure with the, for some time when Chief Allison really made a choice to lead this department during this time period, as we searched for a new police chief, one of the things that he did was bring on Assistant Chief Tony Jones, who is historically has done a fantastic job with fighting crime. And I think the level of urgency that he is implementing and he's really pushing our officers in different ways, maybe we've not seen in maybe recent months, years, or year or so. But I will tell you that there's significant efforts with respect to how we strategize and approach. But more importantly, there has to be a greater emphasis on collaboration with our neighboring jurisdictions. But it's also, it can't just be the human piece. It has to be a technological piece with respect to how we address these issues. So it's not just, I'm so excited Councilmember mentioned the Real-Time Crime Center. It's a very successful tool that high-performing organizations use, but also with respect to the collaboration and partnership with our business improvement districts, who have already started to move forward in such a way to implement technology to help us address a number of issues so we can actually see, an OPD can see who's actually committing crimes. And one thing I will tell you, OPD, they are making arrests. But we are also cognizant of the realities that you do have these sort of repeat offenders with respect to what's happening in our community. So I'm grateful that the state legislature is really looking holistically at where we are as a state on how do we address the people that are victimizing our communities. And you know, it's no secret for me, I tend to be a little bit more sort of emphatic with respect to accountability. Is the place that I tend to lean. And as someone who, you know, wore a uniform in the United States Air Force, I do believe in having levels of accountability. So I'm a firm supporter of the department, of the Oakland Police Department. So I'll stop there and let you get to your next question. I do have a couple of updates that I wanted to hit on if time allows with respect to the landslides.
Since you'll be leaving in about a half an hour, I'm going to jump to 2 or 3 questions that relate to other issues. But if you want to finish your thoughts about crime-related issues, is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, and so one of the things I'm also looking forward to, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday is where we would start to hear the public forum with respect to police chief recruitment process. It's not a process that I'm directly involved with, but that's something I think we're all, just by nature of the charter and its structure, by all accounts, we're all really looking forward to seeing how this process moves forward. That leadership gap is certainly something that we want, but unfortunately, you know, Chief Allison is at a place to where he said, hey, look, you know what? I've committed a number of years to the department, and I'm so grateful to have him as a leader. I certainly wish we could talk him into staying, but he's certainly someone I'm really excited that has chosen to stick with us, but he's also working in partnership with me as we certainly implement a number of initiatives in that area, even around homelessness and encampments and that sort of thing. So,
well, let me jump forward to a couple of issues that I definitely want to get back to the councilperson about. But on our list, of course, are the issues around interdepartmental collaboration and Department of Transportation, Public Works. We kind of wonder sometimes around the mudslides that we face here at the intersection of Ascot and Shelton. If you haven't been there, it would be an eye opener. There's some major street issues that need to be addressed, and we're curious whether there's been implementation of some of those turf issues, addressing some of those turf issues to get some of these things done. And our priority list sometimes around some of these concerns do not rise to the level of being addressed. But there's 2 or 3 things that are pretty major, and I maybe just move on to include the issue around paving and potholes. I was going to make a joke about policymakers and implementers, of which you are an implementer, and one could say you're where the rubber meets the road, and
yes, sir.
joking, you're also where the rubber meets the potholes, and people would love to have them addressed throughout the city. I've seen them everywhere. So I'm curious what you feel are things that can be done under your purview with all those departments to get some things done, especially on Shelton Drive. It's really why there isn't a steel plate over that one area of the street. I don't understand. There are many complications, but what are your thoughts about addressing some of those major paving pothole issues? And why we delayed until 2025 to get some of the paving done, and of course some of these issues around mudslides. So I don't know if you know about the specifics of those problems, but I'd love to see where you're at in terms of getting things done.
Well, candidly, one of the things that so thank you for mentioning Shelton Drive. I wasn't aware of that, so I appreciate you sharing that. I made a note. One of the things that there are a number of key organizational. Well, let me just back up. One of the key elements from day one and responsibilities that I had was building my team. And so inheriting, just an organization with a number of very good leaders, but needing to make sure I place and hire key directors in a number of areas is certainly paramount to my administration. One thing I will tell you is I tend to, with respect to bureaucracy, I think there's a space here in Oakland where we have to break that bureaucracy and move with a different pace and speed and level of urgency. So to your point about, hey, does this pothole rise to the level of being urgent now versus having to wait what's in the CIP to 2025? That's not acceptable. So I don't know what the conversations have been with regards to that, but I do believe that some of the key opportunities that we have before you and coming up in the very near future, we will start to see a different level of urgency moving in the right direction. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself here in this forum. I want to just kind of have the space to button up a few things on my end, but I do believe that there is an opportunity for us to move at a far more significant pace.
And the CIP has been delayed apparently the last 3 years, or denied really. And there's some concern that we often, the dangers of a slide shutting off a main thoroughfare, or people having accidents on curvy streets where you can't drive around a pothole, they're just as equally of concern to other issues around neighborhoods that have similar concerns.
Absolutely. And typically there's approximately $173 million of contracts on the books ready to go. And so, just the idea and notion that, some of the work has been delayed. I appreciate you just sort of raising that, quite frankly, because I do believe that there is a space where we have to move at a very different pace. But part of that is making sure that I have the right people in place first and foremost, but also the structure organizationally is something that we are certainly making a number of key transitions to make sure that the community sees the deliverables. No one cares about, at the end of the day, what is on a CIP when every day I ride down the street, I'm damaging my tires and my axle breaks. Nobody cares about that. And so that's sort of the level of condition. I'm very grateful to have a number of key leaders, and don't get me wrong, a number of key leaders within our organization, especially in the Department of Transportation, that are high performers. But at the end of the day, it's also making sure that the pace is set by the city administrator's office. So ultimately, that's my responsibility. And so that will, I can almost guarantee we'll start to see a different pace on how we move and deliver on capital projects in the very near future. And if it's okay, at the next meeting that you all have, if I can come back with more concrete feedback, I think that would be very helpful for me to just be able to convey that to the community, if at all possible. But I say that respectfully, and I ask of that respectfully.
Well, I say respectfully too that we often have forums with politicians, and it's great, not that they aren't the driving force, but it's great to have you step forward and kind of tell us where things stand as the administrative head of all those departments. So yeah, we continue to hope that you will return.
Yeah, and one thing I will do, council member, if you don't mind, within the next approximately 40 days or so, I would like to put something together so that you have the opportunity to communicate to your constituents some of the key actions that the community should expect, and key sort of across the city, organizational changes that are being implemented that folks really care about. Basic foundational fundamental services that local governments have to provide. That's where my lens is. And so absolutely, my expectation is that the city of Oakland will be one of the top performing cities in this country. Will it take a number of years? Absolutely, but we have to start somewhere, and it's making sure that I have my key leaders in place so that we can move the needle forward. And so I'll be sure to communicate that to Councilmember Ramachandran so she can share that more broadly with the community.
Yeah, she communicates with us fairly well with her newsletter and other. The hiring blitz that the mayor put forward in last year, we're wondering what the progress status is of that. And because filling these positions is critical to getting some of this work done, as you said, at a faster pace. I'm curious whether some of the vacancies, maybe Councilmember would speak to this more, of those vacancies, the 800 vacancies, are they going to be around on the budget proposal next year? If not, then you will have fewer positions to fill, even if you increase the pace. Are there any thoughts about the ability to fill those positions at a blitz rate? With you have a new HR director as well, as I understand. I haven't met her, but
Yes, and I don't know, I heard you mention council members, so I didn't want to overspeak, but okay. Yes, so we do have a new HR director who started on one of the key hires who started on last Tuesday, Mary Howe, who has been an expert and a leader in the human resources arena, not just in Northern California, but also Southern California. And one of the things I think Councilmember Ramachandran had opportunity to spend a little bit of time with her and was able to share many of the concerns that you all have expressed to her with her. She shared them with her directly on her first day. And so she was, we kind of around here, we're gonna jump in the pool. If you can swim, you better figure it out if you can. And so at this point, we would like to, so Mary, she's been on board for just about a week. And so, yes, we do have a new human resources human resources director. And so she's working to develop her sort of guidelines and principles for the department on how we're going to move forward. And again, it's really looking at this thing through the lens of what are the community needs, thinking strategically about how we do things as opposed to how we've always done them. So we are in the space that we have to have these hiring blitzes, or how do we recruit differently, but that's going to happen in partnership with our city council members.
yeah, actually, I see one of the questions come in about just hiring permits being issued. One of our residents here says that they had a simple garage repair project that took over 7 months just to get a permit. Is that something that would be under your purview? I would think so.
Yes,
That process,
sir.
permit process.
And if yes, that would be within my purview. I was looking for the question. I didn't see it. I apologize.
It was under the Q&A. I don't know if you see that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was not a question on, it was one that just came in from a.
understood. Understood. And so I'll try to see if I can find some of the others, but yes, that will be under my purview. And so if that individual wants to, communicate with me directly, I'm not sure who raised the question. If you want to communicate with me directly or through the council member so that we're all sort of aligned on what's happening in the community, more than happy to have that flow either way. But I can certainly make the specific ask of the department to figure this thing out if it hasn't not already been approved. But that kind of leads to us really looking at our organization and how we deliver services in a more timely manner. Again, it gets back to that level of urgency that I'm referencing. So, but if that individual wants to maybe drop their contact information in the chat, that would be helpful.
I'm sure she will. Yeah.
Okay.
And that is also, from my end, another plug to please consider coming to the committee meeting tomorrow, where HR will present their updates on our citywide staffing that include staffing of individuals in the city's revenue generating services, which includes permitting, of course, permitting, parking enforcement, other things. We mentioned the budget deficit, and if you look at our most recent financial forecast, the biggest source of our deficit currently comes from a drastic fall in real estate transfer taxes, in sales taxes, but also permitting and business license taxes as well. So the more that we can staff up to make Oakland a town where it is easier to do business and easier to buy a home and easier to live, the more revenue the city gets, and the more people can feel like their basic needs are being met. And, I just want to echo what Administrator Johnson was saying about, neither of us can speak to past generations of leaderships in our in the city, but I do know that we both share a commitment to focusing on the core aspects of service delivery for the city. There are a lot of things that sound good on paper, but ultimately, as a local government with a very limited general fund, we have to focus on the basic service deliveries, public safety, roads, streets, parks, quite truly the basics, and call on other agencies as needed for the support to deal with funds and issues that the city doesn't have our own capability to.
Yeah, and Councilmember, to that point, and one thing I did want to highlight, we are in the process of closing out our recruitment for a new economic development director. Very excited about what that will look like for the city of Oakland to make sure we hone in on the city's economic development strategy. And let's let's be real about it. Cities compete. We all compete. And so as we look around our neighboring jurisdictions, whether it's Alameda, whether it's Emeryville, whether it's Hayward, we recognize that they're competing for a lot of talent, a lot of industry that quite frankly would consider Oakland, but they're making a play for those industries and businesses, quite frankly, that are even here. And so that's why it's important for us to really hone in on our economic development strategy. So I'm really excited about bringing these key leaders on board. And so we are in the final stages of that process. And one thing I did want to add with respect to the budget piece is the fact that one of a couple of other drivers that we've seen, and this is part of last year's Q1 report that Finance presented during the Finance Committee meeting, which also spoke to the fact that during the budget process, the revenue projections that we did not realize was, one, the sale of the Raiders facility, which was a significant clip, but also on the expenditure side, where we did see an increase in the projected increase in the amount of OPD overtime. But we also have to recognize that with a operational strength of 715 officers, I may be off a few, of about 715 officers, our operational capacity is right around 655, and that may be a little on the higher side. So we have that imbalance with respect to the number of officers on the street, but also the amount of overtime that our officers are having to, quite frankly, work. And so all that to say, like, there are some levers that we are certainly working to try to pull and try to get us back in alignment. That's going to take certainly some time. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that out for folks that may not be aware of that.
Great. Let me we could spend a lot more time on paving and potholes and repairs and crime prevention, and I think you've been speaking to that. And there are a couple issues that before you have to leave that I think involve your office as well. One is, as you probably know, the Wildfire Prevention District, WPAD, failed by a few dozen votes a few years ago. Are you the one that is putting together? I know that the council members pursuing this as well. Whether that will be back on the ballot in November, and how much publicity will be made, and how likely is it to pass, and what form is it in right now?
I can.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I can start that, and Administrator, feel free to continue. But just to say, I'm working with Deputy City Administrator Joe DeVries on this. There is a citywide interdepartmental wildfire prevention working group that has monthly meetings, and that includes the fire chief, Joe DeVries, my office, representatives from Public Works as well, coming together to really zoom in on the Wildfire Prevention Assessment District. I know the fire department's convening their own more granular meetings. They meet every single week to discuss the status of this ballot measure. I will be the council member sponsor of this, but the goal is to get it on the November ballot. Details will be coming out soon, and I will definitely be in touch with you all with detailed information once the assessed value is decided on and the informational material is ready to go out. But there are a number of stakeholders in the city, and very much including our new fire chief, Damon Covington. Chief Covington is really a very strong advocate for wildfire prevention and for the WPAD to pass. And I just want to say that there's work going on it, and as soon as we get some information finalized, ready to send out, I will be sure to share it with the association.
Great. Is that square with your office's understanding of where that will go? Is it your office that drafts it, or does the council staff draft the legislation with Mr. DeVries? He's reports to you, so is it going to be done and pursued on time for November, as far as you know?
Yes, as I understand. So there is that partnership and collaboration that's happening. So it's really in concert with the council members, and we'll certainly finalize it and certainly push it forward for it to be on time for November.
Yeah. It's certainly one of the top.
And again, we of course, we advocate as a city. We don't, we educate, we do not advocate. So that's really the role that we play. Excuse me, I misspoke. No, this is recorded. So and so I just wanted to make that clarification.
Well, as you know, I'm one of the top 2 or 3 priorities for this part of the city, not just District 4, but all the districts that run along the side of Oakland. This effort would do a great deal to save the potential of fire sweeping all the way down to the bay. So this is a citywide issue, even though the voters may be more in these districts along the hills. But it's critical for the city to move that forward this time, to get the additional funds to do the kind of cleanup in Joaquin Miller Park, which you probably know is the largest undeveloped city-owned park in the country. And it's a jewel, but it's pretty much left untended except by volunteers.
Yeah,
So
and
it'd be
so
great
if
to move
I
that forward.
may, if you don't
Yeah.
mind,
No.
and Miss Nima, I have your number, so I'll
Oh,
give you a
great.
buzz. Yeah, one question, I wanted to just offer an update, even on that with respect to wildfire prevention. I did get an update from Joe earlier today, and if you don't mind, I'd just like to quickly
go
just
ahead.
hit on those points. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So with respect to wildfire prevention, the city's vegetation management plan should be presented for final approval to the city council on May 7th.
Oh,
After
good.
the second draft of the environmental impact report, comments are addressed. Unlike the first EIR, there's a collective agreement that this one strikes the right balance between those more concerned about wildfire prevention and those concerned about preserving trees. So it establishes the standard of removing dead trees and dying trees within 100 feet of evacuation corridors. So the second point he had asked, oh, I'm sorry. The second point he'd asked me to make sure I was able to convey. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me just make sure I mention this. So he was sharing that we anticipate placing a new wildfire prevention assessment district parcel tax proposal on November ballot to restore funding for wildfire prevention with this plan as a guide. And of course, this is the whole the amount. So he gets into that. But the city entered into the MOU with CAL FIRE to perform work at Joaquin Miller Park for the city for free. And so far it's going well per Joe's comments. The crews were professional there and also wanted to make sure we called out the Friends of Salisbury Creek contractor to work with them. So he wanted to make sure we highlighted that. And lastly, I'll just convey that the city also entered into a regional wildfire prevention MOU with Alameda County, Contra Costa, Berkeley, Richmond, and several other smaller cities to implement regional standards for inspections, fire codes, and to pursue additional grant resources to make the entire East Bay more wildfire resilient. And so the first convening of this meeting will be in the next 2 months. And lastly, Councilmember Joe did want me to make sure that you were aware and you can communicate it going forward with respect to the undergrounding work that PG&E is doing. So he'll have more detail there for you to share with your team.
Yeah, I think the council member could speak to this, but on the undergrounding issue before you leave, I know that's not something you've been as current with since it's been going on for 20 or 30 years now. You try to finish phase 1, 2, and 3, which are all approved decades ago. Phase 3 has not been touched, but there's a meeting in I think in a few days that involves, I guess, the WPAT as well and its funding, but the additional step that will change some rules that allow the completion of those 3 phases. Are you aware of that effort? I know the mayor is because she was, of course, District 4 person before she became mayor, and Janani certainly followed it.
Yeah, candidly, I'm not wholly aware, but I can certainly get up to speed and make sure you all are brought up to speed with respect to what's going on in those areas.
Yeah, we have the phase 1 up Chelton where this huge pothole is, and then the second was, I'm sorry, the first was Ascot, and then 3 thoroughfares. Chelton is in phase 2, and phase 3 is Castle, which runs right contiguous with the Joaquin Miller Park, which is why it's so critical to get it done. But for various rule changes with PG&E and otherwise, it's been on hold. But it'd be great for you to have your push along with the efforts being made by the mayor's office and Janani's office, and of course the meetings that are moving forward with the departments. So thank you for your concerns and that issue that I think affects the whole city. I'd like to maybe turn back to some of the crime issues before you leave. I know you have a hard stop in about 8 minutes. So since it was the top priority, people were asking about outcome measures for, I'm on the board of a violence prevention program. I'm very concerned about it. But there's also the issue of stopping crime that exists today, not preventing crime in the future. So I'm curious what you think about outcome measures regarding macro and ceasefire in particular, and where you think that's headed in terms of funding the Department of Violence Prevention, which you said reports to you. I know it just got staffed up with a new director, but how do you see that working to reduce the crime rates in Oakland tomorrow, not just next year?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a fair question. So one of the things I'm delighted the fact that we have Dr. Joshi, who has joined the city of Oakland, but also with the audit of the ceasefire program, with the recommendations coming forward in the audit and how the officers that were part of the former structure will be redeployed to make sure that there are more officers on the street. Confident that the recommendations and how we have moved forward in the past historically, and even having specific one-on-one conversations with the former captain, Ursi Jonah, who ran the program during a time frame when we saw some of our lowest violent crime rates, recognized and educated me in the process and showed me how successful the program was. So it's really getting back to the basic foundational approaches that we've actually deployed, that we've seen work. So I'm very glad that that the mayor said, hey, look, we need to audit this program and initiative. And so it is my position that we will certainly see fruit come to bear with respect to really getting away from what we've done in the past, but also recognizing that here are the systems and approaches that have worked. So certainly more to come. I can't remember the time frame. We'll have an update, so I'll have to remember to get back to you all with respect to that. But I'm confident with respect to moving forward with ceasefire in this new direction that we've seen work in the past, and also having a leader that is all about outcomes. From a DVP standpoint, whether it's nonprofit organizations that we partner with, what are the outcomes? What are the outcomes with ceasefire? What are we seeing working? What is not working? And one thing I will mention, and part of the reason I wanted to highlight the fact that we did hire a new deputy city administrator, Monica Davis, is coming on board. One of her key priorities are two things. One, what is our putting together our citywide strategic plan? What are the core service deliveries we have to focus on? But what is the plan and what is the approach for each one of the core service deliverables and service areas that we have to provide to our community? But the other piece, and I'm sorry I'm talking fast, I'm trying to get all this in pretty quickly. The other piece is also a citywide performance management program. So that is that's a significant gap that we don't. And I know that over the years, there have been certainly opportunities for us to really develop that. Many folks have really tried to implement. I'm glad there's a foundation to some degree that has been set, but having a dedicated resource on performance measures, because that's one of the key drivers for really strong fiscal stewardship. What are the measures and what is actually working? And I have an exercise that I've shared with my directors. It's all about start, stop, modify, continue. Everything that we do, what are we starting? What are we stopping? What are we modifying and continue on it with everything that we do? Because at the end of the day, yes, there may be folks who may be upset if we have to stop performing a core service, but I look at it the same way the private sector looks at its approach. What are those business units that are underperforming? Do I have a product that is not selling? Well, why would I continue doing the same doggone thing over and over again if it is not working? Mm-hmm. And so that's really the process that we're really starting to think through. But what's going to happen, but what has to happen is us putting together what is the strategy for each one of these core service areas and deliverables that our community is really demanding. So I wanted to just make sure to make sure I mention that, and I apologize for talking so fast.
No, on the contrary, you cover a lot in a short time. Macro is the other program, which is a fabulous program. On the other hand, how much is it really relieving OPD from its assignments? Because macro has, probably less capacity, but an important role to play. Are you looking at the outcomes there in terms of its impact on response time by police and other activities that they do to prevent crime?
Yes, sir. So one thing that macro that they communicate whenever they report to council is the number of contacts. And I think having a number of contacts, whether it's, I think last year the number was like 15,000 some odd contacts, which is great. And the contacts are described, those are less interactions that an individual will have with police. Right. Great starting point. But at the end of the day, what is the outcome? Were these individuals connected to services? Were these individuals removed from situations where, quite frankly, that could have gone in a way that was not positive? So one thing that I'm really excited about is So we do have a number of new employees that are coming on board within macro, but one of the areas that I'm really pressing the team hard on is before I joined my most recent public service role was with the city of Atlanta, and one program that's called Policing Alternative Diversion Program, and I had a chance to see firsthand
Right.
a very successful program in the city of Atlanta.
Sounds
But I'm
similar.
also It's very, very similar to macro, but the approach may be a little bit different because there were direct services that we were connected to. It wasn't just individuals showing up, trying to assess, but also there was that real outcome. Are we removing people from situations that can go sideways? But also at the end of the day, what are we doing holistically with respect to this particular service line, and that being macro? And so, but part of the conversation I think we're moving towards is really, who do we call and where do they go? Those are and that was foundational with the reimagining the City of Atlanta Detention Center, where ultimately we ended up landing on a diversion and services center to move people off the street. I think over the next couple of months, you'll start to hear more about having that type of approach, which is going to take collaboration and partnership with the county. So I'll probably be calling Councilmember Ramachandran, hey, I need some help to make sure that your stakeholders and constituents are really leaning in us and supporting us with specific asks. But also it has to work in partnership with our health system. So it's something that I'm really excited about and can't wait till we start to put more meat on the bones. But I think we have some foundational elements that we're starting to put into play that will allow macro to be more successful than maybe they have been in the past.
Well, look, it's great having both the private sector experience and your public sector experience brought to Oakland. And I hope in a year, I'll try to honor your 7:30 stop time here, which you're just about up to. Any last minute comments you want to make? But I'm hoping that in a year you feel you could come back to us and say, we've accomplished X, Y, and Z, as opposed to still having plans to move forward. And I welcome that return engagement, and I appreciate your energy and concern and getting the efficiency level and pace, as you say, of government up to speed, as it were, so that we all feel that government is worth the taxes people pay and the services that need to be delivered. We work on the politicians to get things done, as I said, but as I say, where the rubber meets the road, it's really your folks that report to you that need to get it done. So any last minute comments you want to make to our constituency here?
No, I just want to say thank y'all for the opportunity. And just so y'all hear directly from me, I hear and see the frustration day in and day out. And certainly you have a staff of almost 5,000 employees that are actually like really dedicated and wanting to make a difference day in and day out. And are there opportunities to improve? Absolutely. But I appreciate leaders like Councilmember Ramachandran, who holds us accountable, who preaches it day in, whether it's publicly or privately. So I appreciate that support, and I appreciate the vision that has been set by the mayor of moving us together in unison and lockstep. But also, I wanted to just make sure that I acknowledge just where we are as a city, and there are opportunities for us to improve. So I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat anything. There are opportunities for us to improve, but you do have a leadership team that is being structured in such a way that I don't care about what has happened in the past. This is all about looking through the windshield and not the rearview mirror, day in and day out. And so that pace is important. That urgency is important. So I'll stop there, but I will have my audio on so I can at least hear what's going on while I'm in transit.
Well, let me put one invitation out. A few months ago, Public Works Director and staff came out and traveled with me. I met them to look at the slide at Ascot and Chelton. The Chelton issue up above where there's no pavement left. Some of the tree work that needs to be done. There are other couple of issues along this thoroughfare, but if you're happy to join me for a quick cup of coffee, we'll make that drive. You'll see what we mean. And we'd love to have that slide never occur again, blocking that thoroughfare throughout Oakland as an escape route. But anyway, thank you for your service. And we do welcome you to Oakland. It's been a few months, and we hope to hear from you again in the future here. So
Yes,
thank you again for coming.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So council person, Ramachandran, you heard all the commentary that Mr. Johnson made about getting things done. There are a couple other questions around undergrounding and wildfire prevention that I think he was less up to speed on. And you've been very hard on the staffing and hiring issues that the city faces. Do you want to make some additional comments that perhaps weren't covered in the shorter time you had?
Sure. Jumping to wildfire related issues, again, I am excited for the vegetation management plan to reach council, and once that comes to us, any specific questions about the nuances of the plan, amendments, anything like that, I will be very open ears and hope to engage with all of you in that process, because there is a lot of concerted effort and frankly, lessons learned from the last time that I do believe city leaders are engaging with to make sure that this passes this time, as well as, a lot of direct involvement and a lot of buy-in from our fire department as well.
Oh, yeah.
Administrator Johnson mentioned the MOU, the regional MOU. My name has been submitted for council consideration as the representative. It'll be heard at the next council meeting week after next, but I believe that I will almost certainly be appointed the representative from Oakland as the member of this new body. And one of the things that I've spoken to folks from the Oakland Fire Safe Council about, we have 8 to 12 different jurisdictions, part of this regional MOU. How do we focus on, A, getting the funding, and then B, working on the issues? And that's something that I'm very excited to play a key role in, given that a lot of this originated from Oakland. We're working with our consultants, the city's consultants, to set up a meeting and perhaps some public meetings of sorts with our state leadership to be able to fund efforts that are pursued by this regional body. Ultimately, one of the things that this MOU is striving towards is a regional vegetation management plan. Of course, once Oakland's is passed, that'll be a good model, but intercity cooperation is going to be huge when it comes to issues around enforcement, alerts, and vegetation management as a whole. So just putting that out there, that I will be more involved in that very soon as we meet, most likely as the first meeting next month. And then again, when it comes to undergrounding, frankly, I have been frustrated. I did sit in a few meetings with PG&E, kind of joint efforts between my office, Joe DeVries, the fire chief as well, and all collectively meeting with PG&E together. Our most recent meeting was just last week. And I think, we've certainly been doing everything we can to get them to understand the urgency of the issue. However, they have not revised their fire risk model in the ways that, to me, make the most sense when it comes to population density, ingress, egress routes, among other things. We are going to keep at it, really. As far as phase 3 goes, it's not a definitive no or a definitive yes. They've left us kind of in limbo about where the remaining credits are going to be used for, because there's not enough credits to complete phase 3, but there will still be leftover credits that would be able to start it. We don't have answers quite yet, but we've had a number of meetings with PG&E on undergrounding as well as phase 3 in particular. So from our end, we also have kind of roped in our lobbyists to see how we can get more state support for putting the pressure on PG&E. We did receive letters of support from Senator Skinner, as well as Assemblymember Buffy Wicks's office, supporting undergrounding efforts continuing on and accelerating in Oakland. So that pressure is mounting, and we hope for it to continue over there.
Yeah. Great. Robbie, have you received some questions from the audience? I've had a chance to review a few. There's some very specific concerns that have been raised about some of the tree issues, trees that have fallen that need to be removed. And
yeah, we did
go
talk.
ahead.
Here's a question about Shelton and the paving. I think we did address that one.
The Gervin tree issue, there's apparently a lot of dead trees, dead forest there.
Yeah, so it looks like a dead forest, she says.
So I don't know what oversight he has, is it a matter then of staffing that's just simply not available, or contracts? I know contracts get delayed for various reasons. It just seems to me that there are 3 or 4 of these kinds of jobs that just, are there priorities citywide that draw away those projects being completed, or what's your thought about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that in the last budget cycle we were able to get was the additional tree services workers. So the tree services division falls under Department of Public Works, which had its department more than halved back in the 2008 financial crisis. So basically, this sub-department has not been able to do any proactive tree related work at all. And they're kind of the last stage emergency scenario. And David Moore, who runs that division, he is extremely distraught, going around the city, seeing things that are close to being serious public safety risks and not being addressed because he doesn't have the staff or budget to do it. And I know that with hopefully if the vegetation management, if the WPAT passes, that he will have more funding, the city will have more funding to be able to hire more tree services workers and or contract with other agencies to do some more of this proactive work. And that's certainly the goal. Very much understand the gravity of dead and dying vegetation being out and about everywhere. And that is a focus.
I'm curious, of the 800 vacancies that may or may not remain in the budget, but how many of them come out of, you just said Public Works was halved. Where are most of those vacancies appearing in the budget lines?
I'm gonna pull up Nathan if he's in the chat. Maybe he can put in the link to the HR report that's being heard tomorrow. So that gives a complete breakdown of where these public safety vacancies, so where all the vacancies lie. There's a substantial number in Public Works, in Department of Transportation. Overall, the city's vacancy rate is about, I think, 19% or so. And the report actually breaks down in detail what roles are vacant and in what departments. So that is kind of a good guiding start as to what's absent. Now, what's being prioritized is a question I will certainly be asking the HR department tomorrow. There's some ambiguity about hiring priorities and, what kinds of positions that HR is interested in recruiting for with that kind of urgency versus not. To me, anything that's defined as a core constituent service, should be prioritized. Certainly all the roles in OPD and fire, like we discussed before, but I found out last week or very recently that we have 10 vacant fire inspector positions. So we're talking not just about civilian jobs within OPD, we also have similar issues within civilian jobs within the fire department. And fire inspectors, they're not sworn firefighters, but they are individuals that can be trained to do this work. Everything from, wildfire inspections is part of it, but so are some of the proactive efforts that, could have prevented ghost ship fire, and a lot of other kinds of fires as well. And I think the city did, after the ghost ship fire, did do a lot of work to change the scope in which inspections take place citywide. But now that we have these vacancies that haven't been prioritized by HR for recruitment, that's going to be an issue as well. And one of the things that this comes down to is HR not being fully staffed themselves. And also, Administrator Johnson referred to this in perhaps slightly milder words than I do, but you have the structure of these departments, quite frankly, might need to be changed. You have in many of these departments kind of mid-management and leadership roles, but what we really need to get these many of these positions hired are HR analysts. And the highest number of vacancies in this HR department are those analysts positions, where you don't need a number of years of expertise to be able to do those jobs. You just need the follow through with departments to get these positions on the website and hired. I want to see more than 35 to 40 jobs being posted on the city
There's just a limit of 5 per department that you can submit at one time. I've been so strong on getting these non-sworn officers to do follow-up investigative work. I think that would, they're brilliant students coming out of college every year that could track down and pull the repeat offenders who don't have license plates or whatever the issue is, surveillance camera data that they could pull together, and then police could move forward with the evidence that they collect. But I understand there's some issues around that in court. But yeah, those vacant positions seem to be, who sets those priorities? Is that the council who sets the priorities of which departments get vacancies filled first?
No, so this is between departments and HR. There used to be a policy where you could only submit 5
So
higher priorities.
that's gone.
As of the as of the last finance committee we had about a month ago, we've learned that that's changed. And now that we have a new HR director, it's not just listing more than 5 priorities. To me, it's about let's actively be recruiting for all of those priorities as well. Rather than just saying these are the top 5 we're going to theoretically work on and we believe in is important. It's like, no, we need all of these positions filled as soon as possible. To me, especially as it pertains to public safety, revenue generation for the city, those permits, for example, as well as key services, paving, parks, and infrastructure.
All right. Yeah. All of which are critical. Yeah, I'd love to see that. The vacancies clearly are, I imagine, in large numbers in the police department. A lot of people want to hire more police. I don't know where we are now with our numbers. We're probably somewhere in the 700 range. I don't know. But some of these other positions are equally important to relieve the stress, whether it's answering 911 calls or getting some of these investigative leads tracked down. That would be a major piece of the crime prevention effort, I would think. And when it comes to trees and roads and potholes, I don't know, contracts don't get put through. Is that, I guess Mr. Johnson, if he's still listening, and he said he would, is on it. But those are critical areas that he could pressure, I think, where you can probably not pressure in the same way staff to get it done. Yeah, Robbie.
We have 2 really severe potholes that have been reported to 311. One is at the corner of Ascot and Mountain, and the other one is on Ascot near Joaquin Miller School. They're huge. They were apparently caused by PG&E. They were hatches that failed.
They were just filled yesterday.
Pardon me?
They were either filled yesterday by volunteers or by the city. They're both 24 hours ago.
Because I went to DOT and I got the answer of, yeah, we're going to refer this to so-and-so, because it's, how do we get PG&E to do their rightful filling and do it
and that
right?
road between Woodminster and Ascot is also pretty bad. But those 2 fulls that I was amazed, they were suddenly, just last night I drove through.
Oh, okay. I'll go check them out tomorrow.
But I don't know if it was done competently. It was done maybe by volunteers, but they were filled with asphalt. So someone took the bull by the horns, just like they do with the Joaquin Miller Park efforts to clean by the Friends.
I think my bigger point is that when there are really seriously dangerous potholes, there ought to be a way to get them prioritized and addressed immediately. And this has been going on for 2 months.
Yeah.
How do you suggest that gets transmitted? To your office or directly through the department involved?
Well, as far as creative advocacy goes, I will suggest 2 things that has had mixed results, but some success. Some success. One is, we do get a number of 311 requests forwarded to our team, and my staff member Nathan, who's on the call here, will forward them to request a status update from OakDOT, from the department itself. So we periodically, maybe every week, every other week, send kind of a roundup of 311 requests that we've received that we'd like updates on effectively. However, if it is really severe, as has been the case in a few instances, please send it, if you can send us a photo as well. On a few instances, I've directly communicated with the department director with the SR numbers to say this is a real serious public safety emergency. which definitely relates to a lot of neighborhoods in Piedmont Pines and roads that are evacuation roads or near schools or whatnot. And we will try to get them prioritized. Even though I do not sit on the Public Works and Transportation Committee, it has actually either myself or staff members still attend those committee meetings, so we know what's being discussed. And almost every one of those meetings, OakDOT is sitting there as well. So there have been a few instances where we've encouraged D4 residents to come, where us forwarding their emails to the department is not effective enough, where we encourage them to come and make public comment, usually an open forum or whatnot, directly about their issue. And just to make sure there's a smooth transition, that the department's listening, right after their comment, we physically walk them over to the department director and staff where they sit, make sure that emails are exchanged right then and there. And, on a few occasions that has been successful in really getting the attention of OakDOT. No, this is not the way that OakDOT should function as far as prioritizing requests go, but it is a tool for advocacy that has helped. So, definitely reach out to our office with those serious 311 requests with the SR numbers, and we'll see what we can do to beg, borrow, steal department resources to get them accomplished.
What was odd was I went looking for the SR numbers, service request numbers, and these reports have been crossing my desk at the rate of about 5 a week for 2 months, and I could not find the service request volume that has gone across my desk. So there's just something amok with the system that just didn't seem right.
There is, and we did. So I have formal monthly meetings with Administrator Johnson, but we have a very open channel of communication, and we communicate very frequently outside of that as well. And he is aware about this 311 issue, where service request numbers are being closed without being resolved and not being to folks. And if there are examples of those, please forward those to our office as well. Of problem wasn't resolved, but it was closed. What can we do? Because fairly recently we brought this to his attention, and he's aware of it from other council members as well. And so it's on his radar, and just send those our way to our office too, and we'll see if we can create some urgency. But really, there are a number of things within 311 that do have to change systemically, and he is aware of that.
Okay, good.
By the way, the hearing tomorrow that you mentioned that addresses HR delays, maybe you've sent that out, I don't know, to your entire district, but maybe Robbie can send it out to our membership tomorrow, asking people to actually come and speak either in the morning or the evening committee meeting, or send in comments. It's not that hard to do, to send in your comments if you can't appear directly, and just get in their queue, and you can even speak without showing up. But that seemed to be the kind of to engage that people don't always know about.
I would ask that if we could get this a little bit more ahead of time, because it's now 8 o'clock. If I were to get this out by the time people were to read it, it would be too late for some of the meetings tomorrow. 9:30 a.m. So anyway, just beg for more heads up.
Yeah, it sounds like an important meeting that you pulled together.
Definitely. We did share in the last meeting, and then in the last newsletter, but we had a lot of events on that last newsletter. I realized try to give notices of it, but then I realized, wait, there was a lot being shared at that last one. There was also discussion of this being pulled because HR director at the time wanted more time to respond to things. What I do know is that this issue will come up again in the Finance Committee as well as Public Safety Committee very soon. In fact, it should come. So basically, the issue of staffing is being heard in 2 different committees, and that's why we mentioned both Finance and HR. Right. Citywide staffing issues with the report that includes 800 vacancies and whatnot, that is in the Finance Committee. However, it lives in also lives the issue in Public Safety Committee when it comes to OPD's staffing levels, both sworn officers and non-sworn officers. And Nathan, if you don't mind putting that report in the chat as well. That has been held in committee. So 2 weeks from now, that's going to be heard again in public safety. Depending on what happens tomorrow, that report might be held again in finance. And just a note to folks who might be listening in who haven't attended council meetings because for good reason, they feel intimidating and, there's a lot of people and you don't know when things can be heard and they drag on. One of the key things to note is that committee meetings are much smaller, much shorter. Very few people show up to speak, which means that this is an opportunity to really make sure your voice is heard. Committees are really where the meat of these policies are discussed. There's a lot more back and forth. There's a lot more time to really touch upon the nuances and people are listening. Department leadership are listening. Folks that are really relevant decision makers are listening. So committee meetings are very much a way to go when it comes to if you want to participate maybe for the first time, but don't want to show up when there's 45 items being discussed in a big council meeting Tuesday night. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we're running down to our last few minutes here, but one of the issues on the list of questions had to do with housing and homelessness, and I thought Mr. Johnson is well aware of that issue for the city of Oakland and its budget implications. So just wondering if you could make a couple of comments about that issue that will affect this neighborhood and every part of the city. And then maybe you might have some closing comments before we move to the survey at the end and pull this together tonight. But go ahead.
Absolutely. Sorry,
Whoops.
Oh, we lost her.
I lost her. She's muted, I think, but whether we see her or not. She may come back. There she is. We lost you for a second.
Housing and homelessness. Was there a specific effort that you want me to dive into?
Well, I was just wondering what the status is for removal of the encampments in parks, especially and around the lake. That's a challenging issue for every city, but without having housing available. So I guess it's a general concern and its impact statewide, of course, on funding and locally. Is there any progress being made? Proposition 1 on the ballot's going to have something to do with that. Any local initiatives that you feel you could surface, or is that a bigger issue that we can speak to in a couple of minutes? It certainly is.
And I'll tie this in sort of to public safety again. There is a regional housing bond that will be on the ballot in November. And this is going to bring in hopefully several $1 million, more than $200 million for Alameda County and regionally to be able to develop new affordable housing. And, affordable housing is one side of the issue. Services and dealing with the existing encampments that are around are another side of the issue. But I do know that we know that homelessness and our housing crisis crosses jurisdictions. So there is kind of a concerted effort among cities to see how we can jointly deal with it as well. So the housing bond will come to the ballot in November, as will, which I didn't get a chance to mention before, Measure Z reauthorization.
Oh, yeah.
Measure Z funds a significant amount of the city's public safety related resources. About 60% goes to OPD for direct policing support. About 35-ish% goes to violence prevention nonprofits, I believe. And I think 5% goes to fire. It might be slightly off on those numbers, but more or less that's the breakdown.
Right.
There will be a ballot initiative coming forward very soon. And that's going to bring this back to the ballot as that basically ends. And this produces, millions of dollars, over $20 million of funding annually for to the city to spend on police, violence prevention, and fire. So that's something
that's just a renewal of an existing.
It will be slightly different. There are a few groups that have been going back and forth about what the terms are going to be, what the assessed amount is going to be, all of that. It's not an exact copy, but from my understanding, it will look similar to what we have now. But it is going to be very crucial to
I've heard. And people talk about, well, we don't want new taxes. Well, that's not new. That's just keeping in service where we are and expanding those that have great outcome measures.
Definitely.
We're down to our last couple of minutes. Do you want to make any closing comments on Mr. Johnson's presentations or your thoughts for the future in terms of our district?
Absolutely. No, firstly, I wanted to thank you all for inviting me to this forum and for being such an engaged neighborhood association. It means a lot to be able to have an organized group and an active set of constituents that's keeping me and my team informed of things that are going on as well as the needs. And I really appreciate your thoughtful participation in working with my office and understanding, the different roles of a city council member versus city administrator versus these different departments. And, this all definitely helps empower me. And then I think, on that note, a lot of issues that get public attention often get results. So, I explained when it came to the 911 dispatchers, there were a number of residents that called into meetings or wrote emails to council talking about the urgency of the issue. We did get media coverage. There was a lot of public engagement that went on when it came to those issues. So the more that people show up in any capacity that you can, whether that's to your neighborhood block meeting or to of course, I still will keep promoting coming to your council meeting or committee meeting. All of that engagement really does make a difference. Those neighbors with media connections, all of that is to get stories out about key issues going on. All of that is helpful. And I think, on a more positive, uplifting note, one of the things that me and my team are also doing when it comes to really lifting up District 4 and the entire city of Oakland is supporting our small local businesses. If you follow my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, now TikTok, as well as YouTube, and we'll put those links in the chat as well, and they're all on our emails as well. We have been doing a series of small business interviews to get people to know their local stores in Montclair Village and the Diamond in different parts of our district that they may or may not have heard about. And this is something that we really hope is going to help us rebound as a city economically, make sure that we're keeping the culture and spirit of Oakland remaining here, and really tying in our efforts to be economically strong as well as safe. So that's kind of one thing I'd love to offer to you all moving as we close out, uplifting ways that everyone can be a part of the solution, which can start as small as shopping local for your holiday gifts. So no, thank you so much for your thoughtful engagement. And I look forward to another year of a lot of productive work. And like Administrator Johnson said, getting back to the basics and focusing in and zooming in our understandably limited resources into core constituent services and safety.
Well, I appreciate that uplifting message. And thank you very much for your time and your energy that you've brought to the council, and I think representing our district as best one can. So I want to thank Robbie Neely, who is always very shy about it, but had a lot to do with putting the framework together for this event. I'm the president of the association, Stan Weisner, and continue to work with a great board that makes all this possible. And we encourage all you members to ask your neighbors to join as well, so we can do even more in the future. So thank you very much. There is a survey that will be launched, I presume, when we're done here. Is that right, Robbie? And then
it comes on as you log off. So
okay.
It's just 2 questions. It should take you about 22 seconds to answer.
Okay, we look forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you for your participation thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Janani.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.